Hi, everybody. Thanks for dropping by. I am Lowell Duckert at the University of Delaware. Big thanks to Claire, Gretchen, and Katie for putting this together. Um, I'm looking over here. I think I'm contractually and maybe legally obligated to tell you that what I'm going to talk to you about today is from chapter 5 of my brand new book that just came out this week from University of Minnesota Press, Arcticology's Early Modern Actions for Our Warmer World. So if you'd like to know more, I recommend it. Yeah. Uh, okay. Well, I don't have that much time, so let's jump into it here. I'm going to share my screen with you. Oh, here it is. Okay. All right. Off we go. Two quotes to open. The first is from a theater review in 2003. Just as in Shakespeare's original theater, the audience can enjoy the performance beneath the open sky, either as a groundling or seated under a roof in an icebox. Cool. And the second quote is from Shakespeare's Hamlet. The air bites shrewdly. It's very cold. Hamlet is a play full of questions. So I'm going to start with some of my own questions that have been informed by what's some variously called the icy humanities, the cold humanities, the Arctic environmental humanities. But here they are. So, what would it mean to perform Hamlet not only indoors within the Arctic? For a cinematic production to place it out in the cold, or for snow to be piled at pivotal moments, but to constitute a dramatic event through and with inhuman actors of the physical environment. To not merely liken the landscape to a theater, but to behold the theater and icescape as co-constitutive shareholders. What happens when when the stage's heaven and earth are cold, not just metaphorically, but materially, constructed out of the quintessential stuff of the Arctic Circle itself? This little talk pursues the various protests and pleasures that Hamlet's biting cold forges via performance, focusing specifically on a 3 month long production staged at the Ice Globe of Jukkasjärvi, Sweden, an Elizabethan replica built entirely from blocks of the Torne River's frozen banks in 2003. That year, the Beaivváš Sámi Našunálateáhter, or the BST, produced a shortened version of Hamlet in the Sami language. With temperatures hovering around -40 degrees Celsius, that's also -40 Fahrenheit, in case you're wondering, Hamlet and Horatio's exchange over the air was surely felt, not just heard, by outdoor audiences in attendance. Way up here, body and environment, art and world, play and house congealed. I believe that gauging the material airs of the play in these performances, as well as the polar playhouse's rimy materials, helps to magnify the globe's vanishing snow and the peoples most impacted by it, particularly indigenous communities like the Sami. In brief, a snowed-in Hamlet dislodges the piece of work, man, from the center of an increasingly anthropocentric and geopolitical circle, capital C circle, urging us to recognize and to remedy the quality of cryogenic life contained therein. So the ice globe was the brainchild of Swedish actor Rolf Degerlund, who suddenly received a vision of a, quote, snowy globe while returning from the new Shakespeare's Globe in London, built in 1997. He chose Jukkasjärvi, a town in the municipality of Kiruna, located approximately 1,200 kilometers north of Stockholm and 200 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle. Formed in 3 weeks from about 15,000 tons of snow and ice, the theater was coupled with Ingvar Bergqvist's Ice Hotel, A glacial palace resurrected every winter at the cost of 7 million Swedish kroner. Open air, just like its subarctic twin, the ice globe stood roughly 2 stories high and 35 meters across, with a seating capacity of 520 persons. 100 groundlings could stand directly upon the cold terrace, while the rest sat in the 40 or so boxes above the semi-thrust stage. Everything except the wooden lighting racks was made of ice. The Ice Globe opened on January 24th, 2003, and ran for 74 days before totally dissolving in May, only to return twice more. Macbeth, co-directed by Bo Landon and Alex Sherp, was filmed in 2004, and an operatic rendition of Romeo and Juliet took place the year after that. From the Ice Hotel's manager's perspective, the annual reconstitution of the hotel, if not the theater, is assuring as well as lucrative in an era of record-setting high temperatures. The Arctic is warming about 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. Heeding, quote, the circle of ice and, quote, the rhythm of Torne, as the hotel website advertises, quote, Ice Hotel has been reborn in a new guise every year since 1989. What seems to evade the logic behind these platitudes is the real possibility of dearth in the not too distant future. The material dimensions of the theater foreground ice's demise, and not just its fleetiness on a global scale. And I can talk uh, later about the interviews I conducted with the Ice Hotel staff about how climate change is affecting Jukkasjärvi, if you'd like. But there seemed to be a difference between existing and not existing, ponders Elsa, the protagonist of Anne Helen Lestadius's 2021 novel Stöld, or Stolen. Dangers to Sami livelihood, many of them born in the mid to late 17th century, also took center stage in 2003, struggles which have contributed to a long history of racial discrimination, internal colonization, and multi-generational trauma. The BST is a small group based in Kautokeino, Norway. One reason for inviting the company, Degerlund hoped, was to cultivate cultural awareness. Quote, as some 80% of the hotel guests come from outside Scandinavia, we thought it would be interesting for them to listen to Hamlet in such an exotic language. While exotic to his ears, merely judging the sound of their language misses a serious point involving the historical persecution of the Sami, a people who were invested in the protection of their 40,000 square kilometer homeland imperiled by industrial development. This is known as Sápmi, and who are fighting against the obliteration of their traditional knowledge systems, especially in Sweden. The BST, in fact, originated from an environmental injustice known as the Alta controversy. So in the late 1970s and the early 80s, uh, the Alta was going to be the Alta River was going to be dammed, which would have disrupted reindeer migration routes, and there were protests over this. Their ongoing mission, according to artistic director Hakur J. Gunnarsson, is, quote, to give new expressions to traditional Sami culture, reflect on the realities of today's Sami society, make the existence of the Sami known to the outside world, and build bridges of understanding between cultures. To his credit, Degerlund's ancillary aim was, quote, to give Sami a large audience, and to allow a space for them to be seen and their language heard. Artists like Anders Sunna literally put or paint the issue of disappearance in its proper context. We are still here. It is in accord with the BST's core values to ensure that histories of violence are not willfully ignored, let alone watch their culture become exoticized through high Anglo-centric art. Indeed, I argue that their participation did the opposite. It enfolded Hamlet in a centuries-long struggle for people to be remembered, their rights restored, and their wrongs redressed. For these participants in the cool flesh, person subject to colonization without a post, and yet more than its passive victims, the rest, or what comes next, it's not silence. So, some quick takeaways to conclude. These now 20-year-old performances can continue to educate us about ecological life and death and their difficulties up north. A 2003 performance counter-narrated the story of Sámi disappearance. And my hope is that it assists in the making known or the ushering in of different stories of Sámi livelihood, ones that are not relegated to strife alone. What not to be, what not to become, what to be, what to become remains up for question. Those deserving the quote, right to be cold, as Inuk activist Sheila Cloutier defines it, inhabit at-risk locations bearing Shakespeare's impress, from the Ariel and Caliban peaks inside Alaska's gates of the Arctic National Park and Preserve to Jukkasjärvi post-2003. To tell Hamlet's story within a shrinking Arctic circle is to be circumspect of man's warm-blooded and injurious assertions to centric authority. The question turns to how much ice is and will be left. How cold becomes harder to find, not just to protect. So to be or not to be cold is a condition worth re-examining and a decolonial right worth fighting for. It is what multiracial and multi-species justice depends on, what allies are made of, and what staying ensnowed entails. Cool. So I hope to see you on the 12th with questions and comments. If you can't make it, there's my email address. You're always welcome to send me an email. Um, so that's it. Thanks again, and enjoy the last days of summer. All right. Bye, everybody.